wish we had a purple couch that we could trot out here.
I have a motorized one now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our engineering students took a couch, put some wheels on it, a PlayStation remote control.
Nice.
Has Bluetooth so I could hook my music to it, and I roll around campus, students hop on, I interview them, and it's really cool.
He does this on campus, it's a hoot. It's hard, Jerome, not to start really talking about last year. I mean, come on, this is crazy. You get the job, as I mentioned, you got 2 guys on the roster when you take over, just roster construction to put a team together. You jump out of the gates, 15-1. All of a sudden, Manhattan's the place to be. The Octagon of Doom is packed every night. You're winning games. You beat Kansas. Was a magic carpet ride, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is just a blessing to be here. As you're mentioning names, I mean, if I'm a really good recruiter, I should be sitting right between Sherm and Coach right there. Yeah, I should be sitting right there. And then we could probably assemble a really good team with the guys in this room right now. So, but just blessed. God's been so good to me my whole life. And I'm here with my wife. And Honey Bun, you want to stand up? That's my wife, Ray. So I mean, yeah, it's been just joy, pure joy.
Well, I know you're a good recruiter. You guys met on a blind date, right? I know you can recruit.
Yeah. She actually went on a date with somebody else that night. But it's okay. I tell recruits all the time, it's all right if you like some other school. My wife went out with some guy first night I met her, and we've been married for 26 years. So we're all right.
There you go. Overcoming adversity is a theme in your life. Just to tell the story about when you're 5 years old and you're in the driveway and your cousin gets in the car and runs you over. How did you survive that?
Wow, how'd you find that out? No, I grew up in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. Very proud of my time there. I was born in Trinidad, and if you know anything about us island folks, you know it's Thanksgiving and we're going to the beach. It's going to be a big celebration, and for some reason I'm stooped down behind my cousin's car, and he hits it in reverse, and you know it's so clear. Even at a young age, I remember seeing it. The wheel rolled up on my chest, it spun, and I watched it, and then he thought he had hit a bump, so he went forward and then rolled back again. But I don't believe I had any broken bones. I was in the hospital a few days, and that wasn't any fun. Watching the IV, you know, that was not fun at all. But it was just another example of God's hand of protection on my life.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing story. The hand of God, right?
Yes.
You were going to be a youth pastor.
No, I was.
You weren't going to be a basketball coach.
Well, that's all I ever wanted to do. My basketball, I was very passionate about it, but I think you said Will scored 1 point in his season. I think I might have scored 1 point in my career. So that wasn't a gift, but it was a passion. And the gift was ministry. And that's why I figured y'all wouldn't just give me the mic and let me stand up here, because, I mean, we basically had church, right, except y'all took the offering first. You know, so that was the thing. But I saw some friends of mine when I was in college and how they talked about their high school coaches. And I was like, man, I would love for somebody to say those things about me. And just God was able to put it together. I was a youth pastor at the church, First Assembly of God in Cleveland, Texas. We had a Christian school, Heritage Christian Academy, and I was a basketball coach, and I had the best job in the world.
And getting recruited, quote unquote, for that job set you on a path as a high school coach. You know, Cleveland is what, 45 minutes northeast of Houston?
Yeah.
Is that about right?
Yeah.
And so we're in the Houston metropolitan area, and you start with your roster construction.
Yes.
And you're pulling guys to get to play for you.
Yeah, you know, once again, it's like the favor of God on your life is not fair. And kids, I believe, are attracted to that. And they want to be loved. They want to be coached. They want to know how they're doing and where they're going. And I was able to share that with them and use basketball as a tool to help lead them to the Lord. But one of the gifts is the ability to look at something and see what it can be rather than what it is. And I looked at the school in the middle of nowhere and said, why can't we be a top 25 team in the country? And I remember saying it, like, why can't we have Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, and Tubby Smith come into our gym? I remember saying that to one of my assistants. And now neither of those three guys ever walked in the gym, but we had some other really good coaches come through there and had some really good players. Any coach who has success is because they have really good players. But the ability to see that, man, we could turn this into something special, and we did. Last 3 years, ranked top 25 in the country before we went to Baylor.
And you just kind of tossed that in before we went to Baylor. You have a meeting with Scott Drew.
Mm-hmm.
Changed your professional life.
Yes.
How did the meeting come about? And I want you to tell us about the dinner you cooked for Scott.
Okay, so when you have a success, I worked with the Houston Hoops. It was an AAU program there in the Houston area, and then coaching the private school, and we had some pretty good players, and parents trusted me. And so whenever any coach got a job in the state, they would always make a phone call to me and say, hey, I want to talk to you about a job. Well, after going through that a couple times, I figured out those guys were liars, and I didn't want to have anything to do with college coaches. And so when Scott Drew got the job, and I actually just wanted to get his kid that he had signed from Africa because we had our I-20 to my school, it was the reason why I reached out to him. Well, he immediately started with, man, I'd love to talk to you. And that was code for, you're not a good guy, and I wanted to get off the phone with him. I told him no. Well, the worst thing you can do is tell Scott no, because he spent the next 45 minutes just pounding me. It's like 11 o'clock at night. I want to get off the phone with him, and I'm like, all right, coach, I will come up and see you. All right, so I don't tell my wife. We switched cars, though. I drove a 92 Honda Accord. Okay, it had 300,000 miles on it. Yeah, standard, right? I didn't get the mirror on that side. You know how you have two mirrors on the side? Well, I didn't want to pay the extra $200 for the mirror on that side, right? And then it didn't have a radio because I didn't want to pay the extra $500 for a radio, right? That was my ride. $300, I taught the guys how to drive. The bumper was hanging, had a wire hanger hanging onto it. And so I asked her to use her car that day. And I didn't tell her what I was doing. I drove up, saw Scott. We talked for 3.5 hours. He had 100 questions. I think we got to number 3. It was about movies. I'm a big movie guy. He's a big movie guy. I mean, it was just a great 3.5 hours. And when he got done, he said, man, I really like you. I would hire you, but you just don't hire guys you don't know. And I gave him a hug, and I said, Coach, if God wants me at Baylor, there's nothing you can do to stop it. If God doesn't want me at Baylor, there's nothing you can do to make it happen. Gave him a hug, and I left. That was Tuesday. Church was on Wednesday. I get a call late that night. He's talking to his dad. Actually, it's Thursday he calls. But he's talking to his dad on Thursday morning. He says, I'm going to hire this guy, but I really like this guy from Texas. And his dad said, well, why don't you hire the guy from Texas? He said, well, I don't know him. And so Homer tells him, and this is why kids should listen to their dads, right? Homer tells him, go eat dinner at his house. And if you have dinner at a man's house, you'll find out everything you need to know about him. So third time I'm talking to Scott Drew, he calls, he says, hey, can I come have dinner with you on Saturday night at your house? I'm like, yeah, Coach, you could come, but you got to come late because, I didn't want people to see him and raise questions and stuff. And so now I have to tell my wife. And so we go, we get all the money we had, put it together. It was $10.81. And her dad had cooked ribs for us, so we had another half a slab of ribs. So we went and bought another half a slab of ribs, some potato salad, a loaf of bread, and that was the meal. And he came down, my mother-in-law showed up. I don't know how she knew who he was, but she did, and said something to him about me being a good coach and having good players. My son, who was 2 at the time, his name is Seven, he acted up. I took him in the back, he got a spanking. We came back out, we sat down, we ate ribs. I put a knife and a fork there for him, but he grabbed it with his hands, so I knew he was a good dude, you know, and he knew what he was doing. And when he got done, he said, you know, the job is yours. He said, I don't care if you don't have your degree, and we'll help you, because I was not done with my degree. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to finish my degree and get a job and be able to, my wife, we had lost our health insurance because she had quit her job.
Wow.
And it had actually lapsed. And so that day, let me just tell you about the hand of God. That day, while I'm in Waco, Texas, she is sitting in the parking lot of Medicaid. She had just tried to see if we could qualify for it, for the insurance, and we didn't qualify. So she's crying in the parking lot. And I didn't know this. I didn't find this out till 10 years later. And so when Scott offered me that job, he didn't just offer me a job, he offered us health insurance to have our daughter.
Is that unbelievable? Is that unbelievable? So together, you know, this is Scott's first year. He's just taken over Baylor when all this is happening. And this starts a 19-year run as an assistant coach from the ashes, Jerome, of what that program went through to winning a national championship, you know, just a couple of years removed in 2021. I don't think in the basketball universe that story gets played up enough. What you all did to get Baylor basketball back on its feet.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fact that Scott was the kind of person, and myself and our staff, we didn't look at what we didn't have or what was wrong. We saw the potential of what could happen. And you know, it's just Baylor was an unbelievable place, great academics, family environment. Its location was perfect to good players, and you just had to figure out how to sell your niche and just really, you know, find people that fit what you were about. And Scott was just always positive, like always move forward, and learned a lot from him in that aspect.
You got to be thinking, am I going to be a head coach one day? Do I want to be a head coach one day? What was going through your mind?
Oh, I had a plan. I was going to be an assistant for 7 years. Then I was going to be a head coach for 10 years. In those 10 years, we were going to go to 4 Final Fours, win 3 national championships. Yeah, then I was going to get hired by the Lakers. And was going to win a world championship, and then 2 years later I'd get fired. But NBA contracts are guaranteed for coaches, so I'd get fired and still get paid. And then my wife and I would fly around and build orphanages and schools and stuff like that. That was going to happen at 55. I was going to get fired from the Lakers at 55 and start my next adventure.
And then God had a plan.
And then God had a plan. It did. It got to the point, like, man, my last 3 years, I just told God, if you want me to be an assistant for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. And if you want me to stop coaching and do something else, some other form of ministry, I'm okay with that too. Whatever it is you have for me, I'm good with it.
I mean, we know the story. You interview and get the job. But what was it about Kansas State that intrigued you so? You're playing them all the time, right?
Yeah,
So,
you know, the fan base. The fan base was incredible. I just remember the student section and them tearing up the paper and throwing it up in the air during introductions, and how cool I thought that was. And then my wife, every time I told her about a job or someone that had called, the first question she would ask was, do they wear purple? And a week before I interviewed for K-State, a week before I interviewed for K-State, she asked me that question, and I said it just like this: babe, there are only 5 schools in the country that wear purple. We are not going to a school that wears purple.
nice jacket.
It's her favorite color, so, you know.
It works. But you show up. We talked about it earlier. I mean, you got 2 guys left. Now, they're 2 pretty good ones, but you got 2 guys left. How did you put this together?
Well, I know there are a lot of coaches, and I will probably get there at some point in time, that don't like the portal. But thank God for the portal. I mean, yes. you know, we really just looked for winners. On our team last year, we had 10 state championships. And so I think when kids win in high school, it translates to college. They understand sacrifice. They understand teamwork. They've been in the huddle at some point in time in that 6 or 5 game run to get to win a championship where they were down. And they had to look each other in the eyes and say, man, we can get this done. We can overcome this. And so that was important to us. And
now, for fans, you know, they're watching the Big 12 and they see what a meat grinder it is night after night after night. But, you know, when it gets tournament time, that's when all of basketball starts paying attention.
yes.
Off you go to Greensboro, and boom, second round, you got the Cats, Kentucky. Sorry, Tony. Sorry, Tubby. Sorry. But you get Kentucky,
Yeah.
and here you are, coaching against John Calipari and the Kentucky. He doesn't. I was reading some of the quotes this morning. You know, he didn't even really know your players that well. But you beat Kentucky, and you're on to the Sweet 16.
Well, getting the East region was a blessing because I knew I had 4 New York kids and the regional was in New York. So I knew they would have extra motivation. Like they would be so locked in, not just, they wouldn't be in awe of the tournament as much as they were be focused to get to New York. And so, and then when Clark gets on TV and says, you know, when Oscar Tshiebwe with the mitts, and he grabs that ball and he asked, I don't know who was next to him. He said, "You want to try and hit it out?" No, you know, like I don't know what they're going to do with Oscar Tshiebwe, and we just said, "Hey, let Oscar do his thing," because nobody in the country had stopped him all year long. Let's stop everybody else. We'll give ourselves a chance, and so.
W, and it's off to the Garden, the Mecca, and who do you get?
No.
Mr. Tournament, Tom Izzo, and Michigan State, and if you remember, won in overtime in one, probably, right, Clark, the greatest game of the tournament?
It was one of them.
I mean, it was in a host of sensational games. Tell us about the Michigan State game.
Well, I have an assistant on staff by the name of Marco Bourne. And, I mean, he is like basketball true and true. I mean, like everything that's fundamental and solid about basketball, he like believes in, right? So Tom Izzo is like his dude. Like we saw John Calipari and it didn't even faze him. He didn't even want to talk to him. He saw Coach Izzo and he told me, he said, it was everything within me to stop me from asking him, could we take a picture? So that kind of gives you an idea of like,
Right.
And you're in New York, and I've got Quan in warm-ups the practice day before, and Quan, we're trying to practice, and he's looking at the banners, and just, it was so, the fact that our guys, and both teams played great. I mean, it was just
it was a great game.
big shots after big shots, and it was one of those really fun times, you know, where you just let your guys, you know, love, joy, and freedom. That's what we talk about. We want to play love, joy, and freedom. We do everything we're supposed to do during the week when everybody's not looking so that on those special nights, they can play with love, joy, and freedom.
So you're getting ready to play Michigan State. This is Madison Square Garden. You walk out of the arena and make a phone call.
Yeah, I was actually in the locker room in the back.
Locker room, but off the court.
Yeah.
Right before you're getting ready to coach the biggest game of your life, you make a phone call.
Yeah. Well, if Coach Smith, other coaches in there, Coach Bray, like, I didn't know this. I had a routine as an assistant, right? It was show up at a certain time, do this, do that, go out on the floor, start warming the guys up, come back in, avoid Coach Drew for 20 minutes while he does, you know, go back out, do what I got to do, come back in, change. So it was the hour and a half before the tip. It was occupied. My brain, everything was occupied. As a head coach, you're not. You're like, everybody's out there and you're in the back by yourself. And I'm like going stir crazy the first, like, it was the worst. I was like, if it's going to feel like this all the time, I don't want to coach. I don't want to be a head coach. You know, like, it was just, you start thinking about everything that could go wrong and the anxiety is just building. And so I had to develop a head coaching routine. So there's other things I like watching games, listening to praise and worship music, drinking coffee. You know, I have my little thing that I figured out now. And one of the things is like, are there some things that I can do during this time to take my mind off of the game? Because we've already done the work. And there was a young lady named Lily, and she had actually driven to Oklahoma State to watch our game there. And I had spoken at their sorority. And on the way home, she got killed in a car wreck. And her parents, they were going through it. So I called them just to check on them and just let them know there's somebody thinking about them.
And they know where you are when you called them.
They did as much for me that night as I did for them.
This is our Werner Ladder Coach of the Year, folks. These are the stories. This is what it's all about. So we win, and it's on to Florida Atlantic, and you're in the Elite Eight. You got a chance to go Final Four. What's going through your mind? Now, you're just there, you know, with Baylor a couple of years ago, but now this is a different deal.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind?
Well, I knew 2 of the 3 referees in the game, and I was like, hey, that's a good thing. You know,
you didn't have Forte, did you?
Really, no. You know, I really, honestly, I told the team, I wish Tennessee had won, or I wish Florida Atlantic's name was Tennessee. It was the same team with that name, because if you look, Wichita State getting past there, VCU getting past there, like there'd been, because for some reason, it doesn't matter how big it is, that name just doesn't have the same pop, right? Now, them dudes were better than probably anybody we could have played that night. I mean, because they were really good, right? And they were tougher than we were. And I mean, 44-22 was the rebounding. But so I knew that it would, like our guys, we need to have an edge. And so that was my whole thing, to figure out how we could get an edge in that game.
And of course, Florida Atlantic wins it.
Deservingly.
Yeah, at the end, and the Kansas State, their Cinderella story went on, yours ended at the Garden that night. But as one thing ends, another begins. And you're knee deep into a brand new season. You're not going to have to rely on the portal so much this year. You got 3 gangbuster freshmen coming in. Tell us about these young men.
They're freshmen. I was telling somebody before, they show up on campus, and there's one young man who's homesick, and I don't know if it's he's the one that's homesick or if his mom is the one that's homesick. But you're dealing with that, and 2 of them had never lifted weights before, so they were sore. And I'm really excited about our 3 starters that returned, had 3 guys that were redshirting. And I told our team, I said, look, we've got the portal, we've got 4 scholarships. My job is to go out and find 4 guys that can start, and your job is to make sure they don't. And so that's where we're at.
And how's it going so far?
Great. We're excited. Very excited. We start. They're not. I think a couple of them might be excited about tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. when we start Shark Week. But, you know, I like our group.
And for the group, what is Shark Week?
That's that conditioning week, you know. In high school, I called it a week of hell. And then my players told me it's really not a week, coach. I turned it into a month. So I actually asked my strength coach, you think we could do it for 10 days? And he looked at me and said, no. Like, he never, no, like this, like, we are not doing this.
I love it.
So.
Well, we're going to be watching. I mentioned, Jerome, that this is our biggest fundraiser of the year. And so Mallory has a ball. Here she comes, the very lovely Mallory. Would you be so kind as to autograph this for us, and we will auction it off before we leave tonight.
Yeah, this is like the craziest thing in the world that anybody wants me to sign anything, and it is, that blows me away. Where do you want me to sign it?
Wherever you wish. Put it right there by the Naismith Award, since you're our Werner Ladder Coach of the Year. Fantastic. Coach is going to be leaving us. He has got a flight to catch to get back home. So to the Tang family, We thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. We're so proud.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jerome. Jerome Tang, everybody.